Well, good afternoon, everyone. Harry Schroeder with you here on Voices of the Valley, here from the Missouri Valley Conference Tournament. We're going to be reaching a number of the great broadcasters, writers, and so forth of the Missouri Valley Conference. We're glad you're with us, getting all the technical things squared away, and we're looking forward to all that's going to be happening here at the Missouri Valley Tournament from downtown St. Louis. And all the things are up and running, and so hopefully we're going to pull this off. In this particular hour, we're going to have Todd Eichow of the play-by-play broadcaster of the Valparaiso Crusaders with us. Todd Golden will be with us from Indiana State. Also Paul Oren from Valparaiso, Walt Ferber from Evansville. We're going to be talking to the announcers and the writers from all of these great institutions. And we've already set up a number of interviews for tomorrow throughout the whole weekend, and you're going to get the best information you could possibly want related to the Missouri Valley Tournament, because these are the guys that know exactly what's going on in the Missouri Valley Tournament. Those beat writers, those play-by-play guys, they know where all of the bodies are buried, and they know all of the information, the ins and the outs, and why this happened and why it didn't. So we're excited to have you with us today from downtown St. Louis. I'm Harry Schroeder. You're watching it on Voices of the Valley portion of the ValleyHoopsInsider.com website. And first, we want to play a little bit of a commercial for you, because we want you to buy tickets and get down here to the Missouri Valley Tournament.
Make your plans for the 2018 State Farm MVC Men's Basketball Championship. Tickets are on sale now for Arch Madness.
So don't forget, you can still get tickets to come on down here to the Missouri Valley Basketball Tournament and be a part of all the great activity that's going to happen here at the Missouri Valley Tournament. Oh, I know what's going on. I got multiple things going on in my head all the time. Todd, get a little closer to me. We're going to jump you right into the middle of this thing. And glad you're with us. And there he is. Let me turn the camera a little bit more. Live webcasting. Here we are. This is Todd, and it's Eichow, right?
That's perfect.
I was going to say it the wrong way, and it dawned on me I had to correct myself. How long for you at Valparaiso and with the Crusaders basketball program?
26 years, and it's been a blast. This year's been a little bit more difficult than most of our years, but it's great to be in the Valley, to be honest with you, Harry.
You and I connected back when the Crusaders were playing at Southern Illinois, Edwardsville, and we talked and got to know each other a little bit. Tell me about your observations. One trip now, 18 games through the Valley. What's your 2 or 3 biggest takeaways?
Well, the biggest takeaway by far is the support of the schools. And I'm talking about fan base, administration, etc. You can see how good the Valley is in general. I knew coming in it was an historic league. It had teams with tremendous tradition. But what I got to see firsthand is the great arenas, the perfect mid-major size arenas, and the incredible fan bases that these programs have. That sticks out the most.
Yeah, you guys weren't overwhelmingly successful, wins and losses. But watching from afar, being able to watch your team on television quite a bit and online and so forth, I felt like your team was steadily kind of getting their feet, getting their grounded and improving as the year went by. Would you agree with that?
100%. And all honesty, at 6-12 in the league, I'm very surprised that's how it turned out. I thought we would be much better. And I think part of it, honestly, we had some bad luck. We had some setbacks earlier in the year. We lost, our best perimeter shooter and one of our best players earlier in the year, and that hurt because we just didn't have that many weapons. I thought we had a perfect team coming in with 3 or 4 guys who could really score, and then a lot of role players. And as it turned out, when you lost the guy who might be your best scorer, then everybody had to move up, and I think that hurt us in a lot of close ball games. And I really think, we lost our first 8 road games in the league, and in all but about 2, we were either leading or tied in the last 6 or 7 minutes of the game. And we lost a lot of games where, quite honestly, I'm not making excuses, but we struggled to get calls on the road, which
our friend Paul Oren pointed that out quite a bit.
And really, I give credit, like I said, to the great arenas and the great fan bases, making it difficult on the officials. And I think Paul and I actually have talked, and I've looked at the numbers, the Ken Palm numbers, and by far, it's not even close. This is an amazing stat. The road teams in the Valley, kind of, quite frankly, almost everywhere get the shaft. If you look at the discrepancy in fouls on the road and at home, for whatever reason.
And you always expect that at some level.
You expect at some level, but the Valley is greater than any other league. And it's not only greater by a small amount, it's greater by a large amount. And unfortunately, Valpo, being the new kid on the block, probably didn't get the benefit of all those calls at home. And like most teams, and you look at the foul discrepancies, it was tough to win on the road in the Valley, and always has been. And that's a great credit to what I said at the beginning, how great the league is from a support standpoint, making it difficult on the officials in those smaller arenas. These aren't Big Ten, 18,000 seat arenas that have 10,000 people in there, and then it's not overwhelming. But when you have an 8,000 seat arena and you have 7,000 people on there, and they're right on top of you, it's difficult on the officials, and it's difficult down the stretch for the road teams in general. And we struggled to adjust to that, and we lost games down the stretch that we very easily could have won. So the 6-12 record is a little misleading. Certainly as the year went on, like you said, we played better. And that's exciting. And that's exciting coming into the tournament. And we come off really our best victory on the road at Drake in a game in which, here we go, with 9 minutes to go in the game, Drake had been called for 2 fouls. I don't know if I'd ever seen that. And Valpo was still winning the game. So when a few calls went against Drake in the final 9 minutes of the game, thankfully, Valpo was able to hang on and win the game by 5. And I'm kidding a little bit, but that's the real number. Right. With 9 minutes to go in the game, 31 minutes in, Drake had been whistled for 2 fouls, and Valpo was still winning. So, you've got to overcome things on the road, and a lot of it's on Valpo, a team that only had 2 upperclassmen, as it turned out, and we didn't make shots late in games on the road. Now here we are on a neutral site, and our fans and our coaches are excited because we've proven throughout the course of the year that we pretty much can play with everybody in the league. In fact, 2 weeks ago, went to Loyola. I think we're only down 3 points with a few minutes left in the game there. So it's pretty clear that this team's good enough to play with anybody in the league. 4 games in 4 days obviously is difficult for anybody, but I'm excited.
I thought that same thing because the home road splits, obviously the home team wins more often, and it was very pronounced earlier in the Valley season. And as the season wore on, it evened out a little bit. But to bring like a team like Bradley, who only won 2 road games all year, you guys only win 1 road game all year, and to come to a neutral site, I think, throw all the records out. Here we go.
Well, I said this, and I try not to talk about point spreads in any way, but I said, people were asking, well, who's going to, what do you expect in the tournament? I said, anything can happen, and here's how you know. And I haven't even looked at what they were coming in. But I said, in every game that Loyola is not involved in every single game that Loyola is not involved in, the point spread will be less than 5. That's amazing. Yeah. That shows you how close the teams are, and that shows you how close all those games were throughout the course of the season. And I expect nothing more than the same thing over the next 4 days.
In the last couple of games, Smith seemed to kind of break out a little bit. I don't know if that was just, hey, he had a couple of good games, or is he kind of finding his way as well?
Excellent question. I'm not sure. We'll find out. It was really one monster game. He had some decent games. In fact, before that big game against Drake, he struggled some. And there were some good games in there. I think he had 9 points in one of those games down the stretch, but nothing like he had at Drake. And part of that was the matchup size. Drake's the smallest team in the league, and he took advantage of that. And we did. Yeah. And maybe that's just a good matchup. I'm not sure. But going against Church and going against Alizé Johnson, it's doubtful Derek's going to have 22 points. But if he can be an effective scorer, that could open things up for the rest of the team on the perimeter. And there's no doubt the team that wins the game here today in the second game tonight is going to be the team that shoots the ball best from the perimeter, because both teams have 3 or 4 guys who are really good three-point shooters, but there's some inconsistency there. I think Valpo lost in the game at the Arc on December 31st, not because Johnson ate him up, but because Rhodes came out and he hit 5 threes, I think, in the game. If something like that happens, then it's going to be tough for Valpo to win. Bakari Evelyn, who's been maybe Valpo's most consistent player throughout the course of the season and is I think one of the best just pure shooters in the league, has not done much offensively at all in the 2 games against Missouri State. Missouri State's won both games, so we'll see.
I thought Golder has just exploded here the last 5, 6, 7 games as well. He's a guy that, like, I'm working on a story right now, but the people to look forward to next year.
Great homework, Harry. Great job. That'd be something that our old coach Homer Drew would say. If he got a good question, he'd say, great homework. 7 straight games in double figures. He's averaged 14 plus in those games, and he's been averaging 5, 6, 7 rebounds throughout the course of that stretch. You're right on. He's been the best player on the team and one of the best players in the league over the last 3 weeks. He has been.
Talk about Tavon Walker. He's on the all-defensive team, and he was the guy that everybody thought preseason he's kind of the token Valpo player that's going to really make a mark. What kind of year has he had?
Well, he's been great defensively, no doubt about it. And he's been good going to the basket. The one thing is he's been inconsistent shooting the ball, and that goes back to what I said earlier. He's capable. He had 5 threes in a game this year. He's capable of doing that. And he is a kind of a rhythm player where if he gets going, he can explode. He had 25 in a game this year. I think at Bradley he had 26 in another game. Then he had other games where he was down in single digits. And that's what I'm talking about. If he can come out, hit 3 threes here tonight, that would give Valpo a huge edge in the game.
Talk about your job as a play-by-play guy. What's your job?
Wow, I've done it so long I don't even know the right answer. Well, obviously you want to paint the picture to the best of your ability of what's going on the court. You want to stay as neutral as possible, but you also need to let everybody know
who you're pulling for.
Very, very, I think it's very, very important to find that fine line. It's always difficult. And again, I did a lot of the home ESPN3 broadcasts, which the league says to be as neutral as possible. And I think we did a pretty good job of that. But it's not easy. And then when you're on radio, you can let it fly a little more.
Sure.
and know that, 95% of the people listening are rooting for Valpo as well. And they want to feel that emotion from you. But the most important part is to be as detailed as possible. Paint the picture to the best of your ability. Give the score as often as possible. Give the time as often as possible. And then just, the rest is the action's going to take care of itself.
Talk about how have you, I'm going to let that go away. Talk about your relationship with other media members in the Valley. Like, have you gotten to know the other play-by-play guys?
I mean, a little bit. I had a little bit of a connection with Dave Snell, who I had known about for about 30 years,
sure,
actually. And one of the main reasons why, a guy I worked with in college, who was a good friend of mine, actually worked for Dave in TV in Peoria back in the 80s. And he had told me about him, and then all of a sudden here he is. I run into him 30 years later. So, it's been neat. And this kind of goes back to what I talked about, how great the support is. The radio, the TV, the media people, it's at a completely different level than what we're used to. And we had some really good radio people and some really good media people in the other leagues, especially in the Horizon League. However, it was kind of spotted. And there were very few big newspaper people because most of those schools were in big cities,
sure.
And thus they did not get the support from their local newspapers like Valpo does with Paul Orn, who's going to come on here momentarily. So there were some good radio people, but not the wealth of radio people that we have in the Valley, and not nearly the wealth of newspaper beat reporters
sure.
that are in the Valley.
So we can't pick the Crusaders and you can't pick the Ramblers. Who are you picking to win the league? Win the tournament?
Well, it's going to be one of those two teams. I don't know why. It's so wide open. I think with Phil Fain back, I think Illinois State's the most dangerous team for sure. They nearly won at Loyola a week ago in front of 6,000 people at the Gentile Center, which is great. But when you think of Yarborough, who I think is probably the most complete player in the league, and rightfully so, Clayton Custer won MVP, but if you said, all right, who's got a chance to play in the NBA? Who's the most complete player? Who can do the most? I think it's Yarborough without question. And then Fain, who obviously along with Alize Johnson is the most dominant guy with the ability to score around the hoop. When you put those two guys together, now healthy, and Fain clearly healthy, played great in the game at Loyola, I think that's the team that would appear to be the biggest obstacle for the Ramblers.
We wish you the best of luck. Thanks for joining us.
Harry, absolute pleasure. Good luck to you.
That's Todd Eichow. He is the play-by-play voice of the Crusaders of Valparaiso. We're going to be back in just a minute. He mentioned Paul Oren, who's waiting in the wings, a beat writer for that team. We're going to get to know more about the Crusaders in just a minute. You're watching Voices of the Valley here on ValleyHoopsInsider.com.
The first tickets to the big dance will be punched in Evansville. Buy your tickets today.
Welcome back to Voices of the Valley, and I've got problems here, Paul Oren. The camera tells me we're perfect. My screen tells me we're too far apart, so I don't know.
Anytime I'm on the camera, it's a problem. So I don't know what to tell you.
Anyway, Paul Oren runs you work for the paper there, Northwest Indiana Times. Is that what it's called?
A little sliver of the world there, Northwest Indiana. Most of the other people in Indiana think it's in Chicago. Most of the people in Chicago think it's in the middle of a farmland. We're kind of in the middle of nowhere. We're our own. I was going to say a term I don't think you can say on television. So we're kind of the stepchildren of both Indiana and Illinois.
When I read your stuff and listen to some of your podcasts and all that, there's no doubt that you are a guy that is impassioned about college basketball, impassioned about the Crusaders. Tell me your background. Tell our viewers or watchers about you.
My dad's a baseball guy. Always has been a baseball guy, and my parents were divorced. And growing up, my mom's longtime boyfriend was a football guy. So I gravitated toward both of those. But basketball became my thing, and became the thing that I got excited about. And while I love football and I love baseball, basketball I kind of found organically. And it roots back for me to the Fab Five at Michigan. Despite being from Wisconsin, I absolutely loved. I was an 11-year-old kid when the Fab Five came around. And these were guys that marched to the beat of their own drum. And to an 11-year-old, that was music to my ears. So that got me into college basketball. Then when I started looking at colleges, I knew that I wanted to go into sports writing or sports journalism. And a guy named Bryce Drew hit a three-pointer in a game my senior year of high school, and ultimately led me to go to school at Valpo because I wanted to go to a school
Hold on. Bryce Drew makes the shot, so you go to Valpo for college?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I
love that.
I went to a small school my freshman year of college. I'm the first in my family to go to college, but I knew like 20 minutes into my freshman year that I really wanted to go somewhere else. And that year after the shot had been made, which is 20 years ago, ESPN was crawling over Valpo's campus. And now you have to think of myself in the mind of an 18-year-old, 19-year-old kid. If I go to Valpo and ESPN's at Valpo, I might get to meet ESPN. I'm going to meet ESPN, and I'm going to get to work with ESPN. So I went to Valpo. If Bryce Drew misses that shot, I probably have a completely different life goal. I don't know what I'm doing. I went now. One of the things that I'm really passionate about with journalism is history. My freshman year, I was a history major. So I love looking at historical things, and I love looking at how things that we go through today look at, so I went back and I looked and see, okay, Valpo's playing tonight. If they win, they've got a really small chance of winning tomorrow because teams are 1-41 that win on Thursday night. And I love history. So I've always loved the fact that newspapers are the first rough draft of history, and that's kind of what led me, my love of basketball.
Wait.
And that.
Say that again. I love that phrase.
Newspapers are the first rough draft of history.
I love that phrase.
Yeah. Now the problem is no one reads the rough draft of history anymore, so now podcasts are the first rough draft of history.
So let's talk about the Crusaders a little bit.
Okay.
We just had Todd Eichow on. We were talking about the Crusaders from his standpoint. Before we talk about the team itself, talk about your job as a beat writer to cover a team, because you have to have a good relationship with the coach, the players, and so forth, and you're writing to people that are impassioned.
Yeah.
And yet you've got to kind of play it straight. Just talk about that job.
No, it can be difficult. My job's been very easy the last couple of years because Valpo's won 5 of the last 6 Horizon League championships. When the team's doing well, everyone loves your articles. When the team's not doing well, people start saying, well, you misspelled this word here and you got that fact wrong there, and what are you doing wrong? And it's probably the toughest thing is that, especially in this situation, college athletics, you develop relationships with the people that you cover. Tavon Walker and Max Joseph I've known for 4 years. I've seen them at their highest of highs, going on the NIT championship game, going to the NCAA tournament when they were a freshman. You develop relationships. You meet their parents, you see them and all of that. And then you come on a year when they're not doing well, and you're still the guy sticking a microphone in their face. Mm-hmm. Hey, how'd you screw this one up? You led Missouri State by 5 at halftime at home or on the road against them. How did you blow that game? And so here's what I've learned about being a reporter. Every question we ask after a loss is a dumb question. Every question we ask after a win is brilliant. The greatest question ever asked. So I think if you have a good relationship with the people that you cover, I think they understand your job, you understand their job. You're not trying to kill them if they lose. You're not trying to anoint them as God's gift to basketball if they win. There's got to be a line in between there, and then you throw in the fans. And the fans, they say, what do they say? Don't kill the messenger.
Right.
Well, I've been getting a few more arrows slung at me this year than normal, but that's tough.
How have you found the league meeting in terms of getting to know other coaches, other athletic directors, other media members?
Oh, they're all a bunch of hacks. No, it's great. They're
because Todd Golden's right over there.
No, they're fantastic. I think that what's unique, and Todd Eichow just touched on this a bit, is that in the Horizon League, while all those teams were in big markets, and you saw some big heavy hitters there, it just was not dedicated coverage of those teams. Maybe, oh, look, Detroit and Oakland are doing okay. Let's send out, the top reporters and from the Free Press or something like that. But they didn't have a dedicated beat reporter. To see the guys that night in and night out travel the roads in the Valley and get to know them and get to know the coaches and the SIDs, it's been fantastic. It's been good. They've been welcoming to me. I suspect my hotel room could be filled with packing peanuts when I get back to it later, but everyone's been pretty nice so far.
You guys are. I always tell people that the beat writers and the play-by-play guys, they're almost like their own little fraternities in the Valley, and maybe across the board, across the country, but in the Valley in particular, those broadcasters are all good friends. The writers are all good friends. That's a very unique scenario.
Yeah, no, it's fun. We all read each other all the time. I read everything that these guys do. I'm jealous of the amount of space that they get to do it in a lot of times. Again, you mentioned Todd Golden. He does great work called Down in the Valley, excellent stuff that he does every week. Dave Reynolds, what the work he does is great. Knowing how accomplished these writers were, for me, it was one of those things where, well, I just want to punch my weight when I get in, and I hope that I can do that. And then, of course, I decide to throw all that out the window a couple weeks ago when I wrote an article saying, is Valpo being hazed by the Valley officials?
Because
the foul discrepancy was so much. And I wrote that knowing that it would probably come off by some as, oh, the Valpo beat reporter's whiny. And it's like, that's not what I'm doing. I was looking at numbers and trying to prove something. And look, I got killed on message boards from Bradley to Northern Iowa and all of that. But if they're killing you on the message boards, what are they doing? They're reading your stories.
At least you're there.
So,
Exactly
yeah,
right.
so it's been great, and it's been fun. And what I really tried to do this year was I tried to get to all of the different places. Now, I didn't make it to Evansville and to Missouri State. Those are midweek games, and they're really kind of far away. And then Drake was a Saturday, but it was the last game of the regular season, and Valpo was the 10 seed locked no matter what. And so I didn't get a chance to get to those places, but I went to Northern Iowa, and I had the coach Jake Burger at Whiskey Road, I think it's called.
I just learned about that yesterday.
Yeah,
Somebody
so
told me about it.
I had that. I went to Illinois State, and I found the pizza spot that a big Illinois State fan owns. I love that. I took the Amtrak to Southern Illinois.
You took the Amtrak here, didn't you?
I did. Well, that was just because I knew I could walk around the city, but sure. I did a 28-hour trip to Carbondale where we did an Amtrak. After the game, I went to Quattro's Pizza, and I went to PK's Bar, and we left at 3:30 in the morning to take the Amtrak back. It was amazing. It's just all these great little towns that. I've never been to Carbondale before, and it was amazing. I've been to Detroit. You go to Detroit, they don't care that the Titans or the Grizzlies are playing, but they care in Carbondale.
Yeah, that's what makes this league so fun. You're exactly right about that. Let's talk basketball just a little bit. We broke that down a little bit with Todd Eichhouse, so I don't want to go pound through that. But how did you feel or see the Crusaders adjusting and growing into the Missouri Valley in spite of all the horrific fouls being called against them?
Look, they earned a lot of those fouls too. They
you mentioned in your article, hey, they're too slow.
Yeah,
you painted the picture.
Al Pacino on Any Given Sunday says sometimes you're a step too slow and you don't quite catch it. You don't quite get that. Valpo's been there. It's just some of these other teams, they're not all that fast either. But no, Valpo, I think over time you saw that they've been in every game. They may have gone 1-8 on the road, but I think in like 6 of those 9 games they were ahead at half or tied. They're right there. Now they're right there because Tavon Walker is really good. He's going to graduate. Bakari Evelyn is kind of evolving into his role. Marcus Golder's evolving into his role. But every team will hit the reset button a little bit after this season. So Valpo took their lumps this year. I don't quite know what next year's composition will look like at this point. I would be shocked if Valpo finishes in 10th again. That's not to say anything about the 9 other teams. I've not seen Valpo ever be down longer than 1 year at a time. And that has only happened. They've only had 2 losing seasons in like the last 28 years or something like that.
Before we let you go, you can't pick the Crusaders and you can't pick the Ramblers. Who do you pick to win the tournament?
I like going against history.
Okay.
Give me Missouri State.
He wants the Bears, everybody. Listen, I wrote a story for midmajormadness.com, and I
read it.
And I just said the Bears, the Panthers, or the Redbirds. So I think 2 of the 3 teams that can come out of Thursday night.
I can't pick the Panthers because I wrote that foul story. They've got 7 wins in conference. 4 of those wins come in the biggest free throw discrepancy at home on a neutral court. I can't wait. That's what I'm looking for in game 1. What are the fouls? But no, I think Missouri State. I think if they come out and they want to be here, I think they can do really well. I think if they want to be here, and as Todd Eichhouse said, if they can hit some shots from the perimeter, I think they're going to win. Tomorrow against Southern Illinois, I think, Missouri State will have tired legs, but Southern Illinois is not a very deep team.
They play 60 guys. They're going to be tired, too.
And if you're Missouri State and you win those first 2 games, and now you got to play Illinois State or Indiana State, who just played 20 minutes earlier, I think now they're starting to feel confident about themselves, and if they get to the championship game, then it's a coin flip.
Sure.
So give me Missouri State.
That's Paul Oren, Northwest Indiana Times. Check him out on Twitter, online. You're going to be glad you did. We're going to take a break. Todd Golden's going to join us. Pat Hickey's going to join us from Evansville. Todd Golden from Indiana State. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. You're watching Voices of the Valley on ValleyHoopsInsider.com.
consistent hair.
There you go. Welcome back to Voices of the Valley. I'm Harry Schroeder. This is Todd Golden. He covers the Indiana State Sycamores. And Todd, first of all, for the people paying attention to our website, how long for you covering the Sycamores?
It's been 14 years, believe it or
You're
not.
a rookie in this league now.
I am one of the grizzled vets. I am, I believe, apart from Dave Reynolds, I think I'm next on the seniority list.
kidding.
Yeah. That's depressing.
Hey, your team, I want to talk a little bit about the Sycamores, of course, but your team, at times, I think, man, this is a good basketball team. And then at other times, I think, man, they're not any good. Like, tell us the story of the Sycamores.
Well, I feel the same way at times. I mean, inconsistency has been, if you had one word to define this team, I mean, it's been inconsistent. They haven't won more than 2 games in a row all year long. So if they were to win tomorrow night, it would be their first 3-game winning streak of the season. They're inconsistent not only in terms of the season overall, but within games. I mean, they'll have 10-minute stretches of quality. They'll have 10-minute stretches of where you don't understand whether they've ever been coached or not. So it's driven Greg Lansing crazy. It's driven, to some degree, the players crazy. It's definitely driven the fans crazy and driven this reporter crazy at times. I mean, it's hard to get a really good read on this team when they're so all over the place. I mean, you look at this weekend, they have as much potential to win this tournament as anybody does from a talent point of view, but they've just never put it together, certainly not in a 3-game stretch. So I think the question you asked is the question everybody's been asking this year is, what is this team? Are they the team that went into Indiana and just, took them behind the woodshed, or are they a team that lost at home to Elon and lost some Valley games that they should have won at home? They won 4 Valley road games.
Road games. They did well on the road, yeah.
So you never know what you're going to get. In a way, it makes it interesting, but in a way, it also makes this team, from the fan perspective and the coaches and the players' perspective, pretty frustrating too.
That Indiana game seems like a long time ago.
does.
I talked to Greg that night, did a phone interview with him after that. It was just so exciting. I thought, wow, what a great way to begin the season. And then, yeah, the inconsistency. Jordan Barnes is from here in St. Louis. I watched him play in high school some. Obviously, he had a terrific year and second in the league in scoring and all that, all the great three-point shooting. Over the last couple of games, he seems a little, I don't know if tired or whatever. The shooting seems to have left him a little bit at times recently. Am I viewing that properly?
I think he's taken a lot of shots to get the shots that he's made. I think defenses are getting more sophisticated about, guarding him. I think that's part of it too. We'll see. I mean, the one thing about the Valley Tournament, if you escape Thursday, is you get more rest than you do at any other point in the season. So I'm curious to see how his legs are. I don't know that he's been tired, so much as, he's gone against a couple good defensive teams too in Evansville and Bradley. So we'll see. I think he's the guy you have to account for on this Indiana State team, and I know he's excited to play here in St. Louis. He'll have a lot of family here tomorrow night, and he's had a lot of family all season. His parents have been really dedicated in following him around, so I know he's excited. Amadre Rickman is also from the area, from Collinsville, so I know he's excited to play at home, and it's a good time for those guys.
Talk about working with Greg and how Greg accommodates or is engaged with the media.
Well, I have zero complaints with Greg Lansing. I mean, he couldn't be more accommodating, if he tried. I mean, he's if I call him up, he's going to answer. I could go to practices. He and I've, people forget he was an assistant coach before he was a head coach. So he and I have had some working relationship now for over 10 years. So we know each other. We make each other mad sometimes. I mean, that just happens
that's
when
part
you're
of
on
the
the beat.
job.
But in terms of access, in terms of, his willingness to answer questions, I have zero complaints. I mean, I'm very fortunate. Not everybody in the league has, I think everybody has a professional relationship with their coaches, which certainly Greg and I do. But, sometimes that doesn't lead to access or doesn't lead to, them always wanting to answer questions. And I have no complaints. I mean, Greg has been really good to work with.
Yeah, I'm a big Greg Lansing fan. If you just joined us here on Voices of the Valley, this is Todd Golden. He's the beat writer for Indiana State University. I'm Harry Schroeder. We're glad you're with us. Prior to the first night of the Missouri Valley basketball tournament here in downtown St. Louis, when you think forward, here's a team that if you guys aren't winning the tournament, you're not playing beyond this weekend, the Indiana State Sycamores. What do you see coming around the bend for the Sycamores? Obviously, you lose one of the best players in the history of the program in Brenton Scott, and you lose a couple of other seniors. But what do you see coming along? Ty Key had a really nice freshman year.
Well, the players that everybody's excited about are the two Division I transfers that are with the team but can't play yet. Cooper Neese, who began his career at Butler, who's from our area, is from Cloverdale, Indiana. Just a dead-eye shooter. He'll be eligible as a Valley play next year. So he'll add a shooter to the mix, and then Christian Williams, who played at Iowa, is with the team as well. He could play either guard spot. He could play point guard or shooting guard, probably a point guard. Those are two guys that are going to add some immediate, verve to their backcourt. They have a kid named Blaine Brinkmeyer coming in from Iowa. He's a big kid named Diavion Washington from Terre Haute, who's a swing man, more of a guard type. They're going to have a lot of guards. The question mark is, what do they do with their post? Mondre Rickman is back. Daniel Hunerman, who's not played much this series from Europe, he'll be back. But they probably need to get another big to be really to challenge for anything big next year. But they're going to have a lot of options out in their backcourt, and it's going to be interesting to see how Greg kind of juggles them, because they have talent on this team. It's just a matter of whether they can put the pieces together.
You talked about being one of the grizzled veterans of the scribes of the Valley, and talk about. I mentioned it with Paul Oren, but talk about the interplay, the relationship between the riders from around the league. I think it's a unique blend.
Well, first of all, most of them dress better than I did today. I mean, you look at it. I'm watching my peers.
Got the tie on, right?
I know. I mean, some of these guys are wearing coats. They don't even have games today. I dressed like a bum, So they dress better than I do. Obviously, maybe on game day I'll get them beat. But no, we have. One thing I learned when I came into the league is there's always been a group of guys who have been around. And, I don't know that they show us the ropes, because we've all been reporters. We know how to do the job. But they introduce us to the camaraderie of the league. And certainly I had that in my early years in the league with some guys who are still around, like Dave Reynolds and Kirk Wessler in Peoria. I remember guys like Steve Pivovar at the Omaha World Herald, who unfortunately passed away last year. Bob Lutz at the Wichita Eagle. Those guys, Lyndall Scranton, who was at the Springfield News Leader, those guys have been around the block when I got into this league. And you learn from them, not only, how some of the people in this league operate, but, you learn about some of the traditions of the league. We usually get together during the weekends, which we're going to try to do again this year. And
you've been organizing some of that.
I've been sending out some emails. It's hopefully people will show up, but it is unique. I think part of it too is we're not herded into certain media obligations like some of our Power 5 cousins are. It's more difficult to cover Power 5 teams. I mean, they're more restricted. They have more restrictions on their time. Many of us don't. Most of us have some version of the relationship I have, where you have more access to your team, and we have more access to each other. The Valley, after their teleconference, the beat writers have their own.
I know. I get kicked out of that every week.
Well, sorry, Harry, you're not in yet. But and we discuss. It doesn't last very long, but we bounce things off of each other, and there's a group. I'm probably the oldest of them, but myself and Jim Benson, Todd Hefferman, have all been covering the league around the same amount of years, and we've all had the same experiences. So it's fun. I enjoy it. I try to, being one of the veteran guys now, I try to get the new reporters to, kind of to feel welcome and all of that. So it's pretty cool. It's good, and it's not just the beat writers. We some of the radio guys too, and certainly the Valley staff and the sports information staffs. Those are all the people we work with, and there's very little drama in terms of people not getting along and all that. So I wouldn't want to have it any other way. I wouldn't want people at each other's throats and all of that. It's a good group.
When your basketball season, is what it is, what are you doing when it's not basketball season?
Well, my basketball season is going to just change a little bit after Indiana State is done, whenever that is. I cover the Pacers for our chain. I think I'm covering their last 8 games this year and probably the playoffs. So that's something I do. And, of course, Indiana State's spring sports, I'll cover a lot of baseball. Track and field is big at Indiana State. They host the Valley Tournament, I believe, this year, or the Valley Championship. So a little bit of that in May in Indiana, the Indianapolis 500. Summertime is when it slows down a little bit, but it's there's always something, and there's always something to keep busy at. And basketball season, anymore is
long.
It's a 12-month
with things. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have players coming and going, and all of that going into April. See what happens with the league. There's always league news. I don't know that expansion is in the cards this year, but
they're going to have a report like the 1st of March, 1st of April, whatever
it's
it
a
is,
possibility.
right? Yeah.
And certainly it was last year with Wichita State leaving and ultimately Valparaiso coming in. So it's you can make it a 12-month a year job if you want.
Tell people where they can find your work.
I'm at tribstar.com. That's the Terre Haute Tribune Star. You can find it there. My Twitter account is TribStarTodd, and those are the best places to go.
Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Harry.
That's Todd Golden. He's with Indiana State. He's their beat writer. We're going to be back in just a minute. We're going to be talking Evansville basketball in just a minute. You're watching Voices of the Valley here on ValleyHoopsInsider.com.
The first tickets to the big dance will be punched in Evansville. Buy your tickets today.
Well, welcome back to Voices of the Valley. I'm Harry Schroeder. Pat Hickey is with us. He's the beat writer for the Evansville Purple Aces, who will be playing in this opening round of basketball here at Arch Madness. And Pat, first of all, we're just literally meeting. I reached out to him and said, hey, he's the guy at Evansville. Tell us about you. How did you end up the beat writer for the Purple Aces?
Well, I started at the Evansville newspaper 4 years ago, 4 years ago. Covered preps for about a year and a half. Then I covered Division II Southern Indiana for about a year and a half.
The Great Lakes Valley Conference?
The Great Lakes Valley Conference. I had some good teams there, and then Daniel Aller, who covered the Aces the last 3 years. He moved up to Chicago with his wife.
Mm-hmm.
She is going to grad school, and it was kind of his turn to move, I suppose. So that just brought me up to cover Evansville.
So the first thing is, I'm a big fan of Marty Simmons. Tell people about working with Marty.
Yeah, he's a Southern Illinois guy. Really folksy, really laid back, really easy to work with. It's just that was one of the most exciting things I was looking forward to when I guess got promoted to cover Evansville was working with Marty and kind of seeing that old school motion offense that he runs every day and really just getting to cover Division I basketball.
See, I'm campaigning for them to bring the short sleeve shirts back.
Oh yeah,
the NBA's doing it now. All of a sudden it's cool.
That's right. Yeah, those sleeve jerseys, and then it was really neat. Like at the when they retired Marty's jersey and 7 others, believe it or not, this season on the court they had kind of some of like A-Rod McCutcheon. His I guess. I don't know what you want to call it. His banner or whatever it was had that old Ace Purple jersey, Ace Purple logo, and so they need to bring back the sleeves and they need to bring back that logo. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go look that up because it is a sharp logo.
Tell us about the Purple Aces. Your first year going through the whole season with them. Just talk about your observations of Evansville's team this year. A lot of wins. The Valley wins not the total that they want, but overall, a pretty good collection of wins. Talk about that.
Yeah, 17-14. We I did not expect a winning season this year, just with all the guys that they lost over the last 2 years. We're just 2 years removed from the Aces playing here on Sunday, and to go along with that, the injuries that they've had this year. Ryan Taylor missed 6-7 games toward the end of conference season. Drew Smith has missed 10 or 12 games. Same thing with Boo Gibson, and they've still finished with 17 wins and 7 in the Valley, and that's they've just been a resilient group all year. Marty will say the same thing, and I know beat writers don't often like to kind of repeat those kind of cliches, but it's been true. They've punched above their weight class, I think, this year.
When I have watched them, I talked to Marty preseason, and I was like, Drew Smith is going to be a really good player. And he said, yeah, I think so. So we're talking about that. Then I watched him, and I thought he was spectacular when he was healthy this year. And so I broke down all the numbers. Like if I gave a point value for where people finished in the scoring and rebounding, and he's maybe the second or third best player if you kind of bring in all of the stats. I think he's an electric basketball player.
I completely agree. He's missed 7 or 8 Missouri Valley games this year, and that kind of kept him out of the running for any kind of any of the first or second or third team accolades at the end of the year. But I'm with you. I thought he was on pace to be a first team guy. Just with everything he does on both sides of the ball, and it's just been really cool for, I guess, me and the media. He's an Evansville guy, Evansville native, played on an outstanding Evansville Rights team a few years ago that went to the state title game. He's incredible to watch, and just a sophomore.
So 5 years in a row, Evansville's had the leading scorer in the league. I kind of feel like Marty could put Pat Hickey in that position, and he's going to lead the league in scoring. How weird is that?
It's something. I asked Marty about it. Like, what do you make of this? What do you make of this trend? 5 straight years. Of course, DJ Ballantyne gets that for the first 3. Jalen Brown last year, and then now this year, Ryan Taylor.
Well, and before that, Colt Ryan was second to Doug McDermott every year.
Right. So yeah, it could be even further, even more than that. It's definitely kind of a combination of the way Evansville plays. With that star system, they have a guy who, they want taking the majority. I don't know about the majority of the shots, and it's not really by design, but it's kind of just like a quarterback in football. They want the ball in the hands of the best playmakers. So it's a combination of that, and they've just had some really good scorers. And we'll see one tonight with Ryan Taylor. This guy can just flat out shoot.
And at 6'6",
yeah,
he's a perimeter guy, and he's going to be taller than most of the people guarding him.
Right. Yeah, that's the big thing. Like he's 6'6", so that's the difference between him and Jalen Brown last year, who was 6 foot. DJ Ballantyne, who is 6'2", he's got 4 to 6 inches on both of those guys. Quick release, can shoot it, doesn't need any space. You can have a hand in his face. He doesn't have to be balanced either. He just makes the most kind of ridiculous shots at times. It's unreal the kind of scorer he is.
I was at the Ford Center when the Purple Aces won the CIT championship, when it covered that, and so for the people of ValleyHoopsInsider.com, they haven't been to the Ford Center. Describe that place. I think it's a terrific place where the Ohio Valley Conference is playing its conference tournament this weekend, another league we cover here at ValleyHoopsInsider.com. I think it's a great venue.
Yeah, it's an arena that's built, I guess, more for hockey. On the baselines, you've got quite a bit of background space, I suppose. So that's been something that's kind of been interesting. When I covered Southern Indiana the last year and a half, 2 years.
They played the GLVC tournament there.
They did.
Yes.
And they also have the Small College Basketball Hall of Fame Classic there. So that's always something that's fun to ask, guys who aren't used to playing there, is, shooting with a, kind of an open backdrop. But it's just a first-class arena. And they've had quite a few tournaments and everything held there, just in its 6th or 7th year now. they're all the tournaments that they run there are just first class. They are very, very fortunate to Evansville's very fortunate to have it, and the Aces are fortunate to play there, I think.
When I travel the Valley and get to know people, one of the things I really like is some of the I want to think connectivity or something. Your PR staff, your coaching staff. I mean, people end up staying around and they're very glued into the programs. I mean, to me, that's part of what makes this whole conference special is that people, they understand the history. They understand what makes Evansville important, what makes University of Evansville special. Is that what you found? I mean, you're you and I were coming on. You said, "Well, I'm kind of the young guy. I don't want to say anything too crazy," but yeah. What are your first impressions of what I think is just an incredible, unique conference?
There's on the conference or Evansville.
School first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, on Evansville, I mean, just the history that they have. That was the first thing that I really had to understand when I took on the beat was, just everything about the Arad McCutcheon years and their dominance at the college division level, moving up to D1 in '77, the plane crash, and ever since then, all the the tournaments that they've been to and the great players that they've had. And I think that history and everything that is not lost on the Aces fan base. They are a bulk of their fan base is an older generation that stuck around. It had such a big impact on them back when they were in college and growing up in Evansville, and so I think that's really kind of been the neatest thing about getting to know this program.
Evansville's a smaller university, maybe 5,000 students or whatever, but yeah, it's a great environment. Okay, so you're the rookie guy. Rookie hazing by the writers?
Not really. I've been surprised. I came here for media day, back in whenever that was, October. Yep. And another one of the rookies here in the Valley, Wyatt Wheeler with the Missouri State newspaper. We were kind of talking back and forth, a little bit scared if there was going to be some hazing, but no, nothing. Thankfully, they've all been great. All the beat writers here. I couldn't have asked for a better year from being helped out in the Valley and really everything.
So the tournament hasn't even started, really.
Right.
First impressions of both the Scott Trade Center and just what's going to go on this weekend.
Well, this is my first time at Scott Trade Center, so it's I've heard it's been renovated with the video board, the jumbotron, and it all looks fantastic. I mean, I don't want to compare it to the Ford Center. Obviously, it's not. They play NHL games here, but I mean, it's first class. I'm really excited.
Final question: you cannot pick the Purple Aces, and you cannot pick the Ramblers.
Okay.
So, what team is not the favorite? Meaning the Ramblers are the favorite, and they're not your favorite, meaning the team you know the best. Who would you pick?
Well, coming into the year, I was the only guy that picked Illinois State to win the league, and I didn't know who everybody else was picking, or else I would have picked Missouri State as well. But man, I just
you were the one.
I was. A lot of people were thinking it was somebody with Illinois State, but nope, sure. That was me. I knew they lost a lot of guys to transfer and everything, but still, Keyshawn Evans. Everybody knew that guy was going to be a stud. Phil Fain, people knew about him. Malik Yarbrough was the guy that I actually voted for him for Player of the Year. I didn't vote for Custer. Not that Custer wasn't deserving by any means, but
kind of the renegade. Not only is he the rookie, he's the renegade.
I wanted to be a little bold, I guess. I didn't want to just pick the best player from the best team, right, or for Coach of the Year. Porter Moser, I love Porter Moser. He's been great to me, and I think he's also deserving of Coach of the Year. I think I actually went with Nico Medved.
Nico finished second in the polling, by the way.
I don't know. I guess I just like to be different, I suppose. But
I really thought Nico and Barry Hinson, who finished third.
Yes.
I thought both of those guys deserved real consideration. Barry playing with 6 guys and finishing second. Drake is picked to go 10th. They finished whatever it was, third or fourth. In all the tiebreakers, I don't really remember where they really landed, but. I thought both of those coaches were really deserving.
Agreed. I had Nico first, I had Barry second, I had Porter third. And that, not a knock on Porter. Again, Porter, if you're listening.
He's not.
But yeah, Barry.
But I will tweet it out later.
Oh man, he's not going to talk to me anymore. But no, it's been such a special year in the Valley. A really neat first year for me. Being a rookie, no Wichita State here to kind of dominate over everybody. I know everybody in the league was really excited about this year, and so I'm lucky for my first year to be in kind of this new era of the Valley.
Not a rookie anymore. He's been on Voices of the Valley, so he's not a rookie anymore. He's completed this cycle, made it all the way here. Will you stay throughout the weekend? Let's say the Purple Aces lose. Some of the reporters, bang, their papers are bringing them home. Will you be here through the weekend?
Well, if Evansville loses tonight, I'll probably come back tomorrow, at least for the first session. But it's just a busy week. I would say it's the busiest week of the year for us because, like you mentioned, we have the Ohio Valley Conference Tournament in Evansville. Ohio Valley Conference Tournament's in Evansville.
Right.
And then we also have the first round of high school boys basketball sectionals starting. So it's just a crazy week. I don't know that my bosses would like me sticking around and eating popcorn, watching good basketball as much as I'd like to.
Although that is a wonderful job.
It is.
We're going to take a break. Pat Hickey, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Harry.
You're watching Voices of the Valley here on ValleyHoopsInsider.com, and we'll be right back.
The first tickets to the big dance will be punched in Evansville. Buy your tickets today.
Well, welcome back to Voices of the Valley. I'm Harry Schroeder. That'll do it for this broadcast. Our thanks to Todd Eichow and Paul Oren, who cover the Crusaders of Valparaiso, and Todd Golden, who was with Indiana State, and then that last young man, Pat Hickey, the Evansville Purple Aces beat writer. That'll do it for this one. Now, tomorrow, we'll be right back here an hour and a half before the opening tip of the Saturday sessions, and great guests. Mitch Holtis will be with us, and Tom Ackerman will be with us from the Valley TV program, and a number of the other writers and broadcasters as well. That'll do it for this one. We're so glad you've been with us today on Voices of the Valley. Remember, I'm Harry Schroeder. Remember, since you've been there, make it a better day. Make it a better place. We'll be back again tomorrow and with more Voices of the Valley here on ValleyHoopsInsider.com.